just encouraging you to find your seats and have a seat and settle in for a little bit. We're going to be starting in a minute or two. Those of us joining from home via live stream, thank you, welcome. Please stand by. So it'll probably be about another minute or two, and I'll meet you back here on the stage. And just a reminder for those of you in the room, we are now live streaming, so to be thoughtful about your acoustics or your visuals, here's the camera angle right here, so we can keep that in mind. And that's going to be a constant throughout the day today. So great, welcome, and see you in a moment. Okay, here we are. That's right on. Okay, so just the feedback from folks on the live stream, thank you. I'm hoping this is a better audio sound for you. I'll just repeat that we're going to get going in a minute or two. Thank you and stand by. And I was just reminding folks here that our live stream is now active, so just be thoughtful about your sound and visuals. The camera angle is here, but what's heard in the room is going to get picked up on the camera at this point moving forward and for the rest of today. And so that's if you're listening from home and you've got any more concerns, just keep on with the chat and we'll meet you there, okay? Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Jordan Strom, and I'm the curator of exhibitions and collections at the Surrey Art Gallery. Very excited to be back. Doing more live events, and really appreciate those of you who made it out and those of you who are joining us from home. A couple, I guess, introductory remarks before we kick things off. It's been great that many of you have gone over to the galleries and seen some of the exhibitions and the art that we have on hand right now. There are many shows, and I encourage you to go and take a look a little later when there's a break. But we are celebrating a wonderful performance, and we're going to have a discussion today. Welcome to today's event, A New Normal. And I want to welcome you also on behalf of Alison Raja, our director, and the gallery staff to today's event. I want to begin by acknowledging that we are here as uninvited guests on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples. We at the gallery are especially grateful to the Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, and Katzie peoples, whose land the Surrey Art Gallery resides most directly impacts. And it's always critical to acknowledge our colonial context, not just the history, but our present. But also I've been thinking a lot about the environment and its relationship to our colonial history this past week, both in watching some of the rehearsals for today's performance, but also in relation to the discussion happening in Glasgow, of course, that continues. And it's been clearly highlighted at that conference in the UK, that world cities, including many of those on the edges of metropolitan areas, such as the one that we are in today, are those places that need the most in terms of need to adjust the most, and in many ways have felt the impacts the greatest and the fastest. And we see these destructive harms on a daily basis. We have the most traffic, we have the most industry in many cases, and a great deal of waste production. So the environment faces the largest pressures here. And the barriers that are presented to locals, and especially to indigenous peoples and others on this land is particularly critical to recognize. And so today's performance and discussion, with its focus on climate change and pandemic isolation, among other themes, it's particularly poignant to consider these. So I would argue that we need to consider not just the global context, but where we are here locally in relation to the land and the peoples of this land, the stewards and the keepers, knowledge keepers. So sound thinking was a kind of earlier incarnation of this event. We began doing these symposia in 2008. Featuring electronic art and digital art with a special emphasis on sound and oral cultures and on sound art and in sound more generally in our culture and in different contexts around the world. We featured many different speakers and performers and visual artists and sound artists. In 2019, we shifted to more of a broader sort of scope of looking at electronic and media art. Of course, last year we had a bit of a imposed hiatus, as was the case in so many places. So it's really wonderful to be back again with our symposia today. So, without further ado, I want to introduce today's convener. Many of you know Cecily Nicholson. I'll give you a little background if you're not familiar with Cecily's work. Cecily worked for many years as an administrator at the Gallery Gachet, an artist-run center and mental health resource in the downtown east side of Vancouver. She's also been a part of the Joint Effort Prison Abolitionist Group and a member of the Research Ethics Board of Emily Carr University Art and Design. As a poet, Cecily's achievements are also substantial. She's the author of Triage, From the Poplars, and Wayside Sang. She was the 2017 Ellen Warren Tellman Writer-in-Residence at SFU, Simon Fraser University, and she was winner of the 2015 Dorothy Livesay Poetry Prize. And She was also the 2018 recipient of the Governor General's Award for Poetry. Former resident of Vancouver and Burnaby, she is currently based in New Westminster, which means, and I've checked this on a map, she's on a trajectory to moving back to Surrey in the coming years. Just a prediction, it's not official. Since 2018, we believe, we were trying to run the numbers, Cecily has been working here as the gallery interpretive programmer, which means she's been involved in many, many initiatives and programs for adults and children and young adults. So please join me in welcoming Cecily Nicholson.
Whew, mask off. Jordan, thank you so much. That's for your thoughtful introduction and going beyond my bio and sharing a bit more about who I am and relative to this space. I realize that I cannot see my notes super clear here in terms of the light. I don't know, maybe I'll just do that. Works. So I, as Jordan has mentioned, have worked as the interpretive programmer here at the gallery for a few years now. But my relationship to Surrey Art Gallery spans many more years, and early on was as a patron. And my first introduction to the space, in fact, was attending the Sound Thinking Symposium of 2010. And indeed, I was a resident of Surrey at the time. And I attended not as a media artist, I don't have that skill set or that field of experience, but more as a writer and as a poet. And my interest thinking through and observing and witnessing and collaborating with media artists in the realm of digital work, ultimately interested in interactivity, interested in these realms of collaboration, but ultimately and always in the gallery setting, I am fascinated and interested in language. And I tell you that people who work in sound and engage deeply down the rabbit holes of these fields have a wonderful discourse, layers of discourse that I find absolutely fascinating. Today, in terms of my work at the gallery, oh, I'm gonna have to do this again. Yes. So in terms of my work at the gallery, I am also grateful to be here on these lands and on this territory, and thinking through a deep respect and a continued learning from the Semiama, Kwantlen, and Katzie peoples, who have been a part of this land and cared for this land since time immemorial. So learning from the nations, learning from the land, but also ultimately and always learning from the artists and the educators who grace this space as well. So I'm super grateful. In terms of the symposium, you stick around a few years and eventually somebody invites you to do something, and that's exactly what happened to me. So again, long before I was a worker here, I was invited to participate as a poet in an event in 2015 that was convened, the 2010 one was convened by Brady Cranfield and centered around soundscapes. It was absolutely fascinating. The 2015 gathering, to my heart, centered around the literary, poetic, sound, and gathered in a wonderful way a number of beautiful poets and writers, mainly south of the Fraser. So a real rich body of engagement and gathering. So I was really grateful to be a part of that event. And incidentally, it was at that event that I met the poet and video artist Connie Vass. And I just thought I'd note that as Jordan was mentioning sort of the long history of the symposium, last year we were unable to actually host it, so we missed that. And this year is an abridged version. We're doing sort of an adapted version. Next year, Tom is the convener, and we're going to gather around this notion of international video poetics and work in collaboration, hopefully with some of various stars and constellations in terms of that realm. So I look forward to it. So a little note for next year. Yeah, and so in terms of today's event, we are really lucky to be a witness in some ways to work in progress or creation in progress. And I think that is always a very generous point to meet people as they engage in their work. So the gathering is going to center on a performance, and I'm going to stop talking pretty soon and we'll move to that part. And then the participants of that performance are going to join us for a panel and talk back. If you have questions, if the audience at home has questions, and I have some questions that we'll work on together. So I look forward to that. And I'm going to introduce the performance, PPE, A New Normal, or A New Normal. It's got a question mark at the end. I got to keep practicing how to say that question mark. And so I'll introduce that in a minute. But just for the live stream audience, I just thought I'd make a note. So we're going to do the performance. We're in the introduction right now. We're in a moment where we're not really doing print programs, so I'm just going to talk you through it. So we're in the introduction. We're going to move to the performance. That's going to be about a 20-minute or so adventure or engagement. We're then going to take a break, and that's for our in-person audience. We have food and snacks. We hope you'll join us out in the lobby. But for those of you at home who can't join us in that way, we're so grateful that you're here. And we have a slideshow, a slide deck that's been put together detailing the history of the symposium and gathering. And it's a lovely set of images and evocations. So I hope you'll enjoy that in the interim. And then we will come back about 2:15 here on stage with the participants and engage in the discursive side of this event. And we'll conclude with the Q&A. And then again to the social. So that's kind of what we're up to today. And so I look forward to introducing the participants more fully after the performance. And so I'll engage in our bios and our introductions a little more specifically. But just for now, I will give just a brief intro to the performance, and then I'm just going to step out of the way and we'll engage those folks where they are at. So the performance, PPE Waves, A New Normal, is an excerpt of Work in Progress, and it's choreographed by Henry Daniel, the amazing Henry Daniel, and it's danced by Diane Sowter and Zaarah Ibarra Lopez. And I apologize for pronunciations. I'll keep working on those today. Charlie Cooper has composed the music, and the set is designed by Alan Storey. As Henry Daniel notes, we are entering a new phase of humanity. It is as if we are awakening to a new reality. Imagine yourself as a body frozen in a cube of ice, a glacier slowly melting after millions of years in a state of suspension. So I'll say no more, and we'll pause for the movement of the stage and comfort in your seat as we black out, and I'll rejoin you in a little while. So once again, thank you for joining us here in person, online, and I look forward for the rest of the afternoon today.
For a few weeks each February, small towns pop up like brigadoons on the ice of Lake Winnebago, the largest inland water body in Wisconsin. Winnebago is a vestige of the much larger glacial Lake Oshkosh, which formed from ponded meltwater late in the Ice Age and left behind heavy clay sediment that is the bane of gardeners in our area. Lake Winnebago is shallow and often alarmingly green in the summer as a result of runoff from lawns and farms, but still it supports a healthy population of lake sturgeon. Each year before they head into upstream tributaries to spawn, the sturgeon in Lake Winnebago congregate in a few areas, and the temporary towns start to appear on the ice, mirroring the fish communities below. Sturgeon are large fish. The record setter for this area was 240 pounds. Their lifespan is longer than that of humans, and their lineage has been around since the early Cretaceous. They are caught not with delicate hooks and lines dropped through narrow auger holes, but with trident-like spears plunged into large rectangular openings sawn in the ice. As early as the 1910s, there was concern about the declining sturgeon population in Lake Winnebago and connected waters. Both the flesh and the roe of sturgeon fetched high prices, and year after year, commercial fishing operations caught as many fish as possible. In the winter of 1953, when almost 3,000 fish were taken, the public awoke to the possibility that the sturgeon could soon be harvested to extinction. Sturgeon spearers and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources began to work together to monitor the population and set catch limits. We think that our worldview represents an epistemic rupture so radical that nothing of the past survives in it, and that our technologies lift us above the oppression of natural history that for so long defined the human experience. But stranded in the island of now, we are lonely. When I see people crowded together in the cold each year to see big, old, ugly fish being weighed, I sense a very unmodern yearning to connect with the past. And I suspect that our self-imposed exiles from it is the source of many ills. Environmental malfunctions and existential malaise are arguably both rooted in a distorted sense of humanity's place in the history of the natural world. People would treat each other and the planet better if we embraced our shared past and common destiny, seeing ourselves more as lucky inheritors and eventual bequeathers, rather than permanent residents of the Earth estate. In short, we need a new relationship with time.
Is this on? It is, okay. So thank you again to our performers. So maybe one more round of applause for now in a moment. Lots to think on and to ponder. We're going to take a moment to allow the participants to kind of gather themselves and rejoin us on stage. And just for the moment for here, we're in an intermission. So please join us in the lobby for some snacks and beverages. And if you'd like to be without a mask, sitting down while eating food is just the rule. We also have the outdoor courtyard in the center of the gallery there, or the art center there. So please make yourself at home. And so I would recommend, can I have a time check right now where we're at? 43. Okay, so I would say I would recommend coming back here at about 5 after 2, 10 after 2, and we'll reconvene with the artists. So thank you again, and we'll see you in a moment. And for those of you at home on the live stream, hold tight and enjoy our slideshow, and we'll see you in a moment. This is a good break for you all too on your couches. So here again soon. Thank you. to folks who were waiting patiently at home or hopefully going for your own snacks and beverages and conversations amongst yourselves and the cats, speaking to my own experience. I'm so glad you could rejoin us. And so the second part of today's gathering, as I mentioned earlier, is an opportunity to connect and hear from a bit more the participants in the performance that we just witnessed earlier. And so before I go too much deeper into questions and sort of the miscellany, let me share some bios from these folks, which are pretty impressive. And I'm just going to go down the list. And certainly, as we get into our conversation today, if folks want to add more about themselves or share more that isn't in your bio, I hope we can get there. So, starting first of all with Henry Daniel. So currently an SFU Distinguished Professor, Henry Daniel began his career as an actor with the James Lee Was San Fernando Drama Guild, and continued in Port of Spain with Derek Walcott's Trinidad Theatre Workshop. He was a founding member of Astor Johnson's groundbreaking repertory dance theatre of Trinidad and Tobago. In the USA, Henry was a member of the Alvin Ailey American Dance Center and, the Alvin Ailey American Dance Center Workshop and the Pearl Primus African American Dance Company, among other groups. In Germany, he founded and directed Henry Daniel and Dancers, while continuing to work as a member of the Tanz Project München, the Tanz Theatre Freiburg, and in the UK, he founded and directed the performance group Full Performing Bodies, which he still maintains. So Henry Daniel to my right. Diane Sowter studied classical dance at the Hammond School in Chester and went on to work with the Stadttheater Krefeld, Mönchengladbach, practicing my non-existent German, Germany.
Mönchengladbach.
Nice. Sorry, it just sounds so great when you say it. I'm not going to repeat it. The Arcadia Dance Company in London and the Israeli Ballet in Tel Aviv. And when she returned to Germany, her career continued with the Tanztheater Heidelberg, the Tanztheater Freiburg, the Tanztheater Münster, and with Henry Daniel in Dancers. No surprise. So she is a gyrotonic, is that the right? Yeah. Pre-trainer and Pilates instructor with her own studio in Vancouver, having trained in London with Alan Herdman. Zaarah Ibarra Lopez was born and raised in the indigenous homelands of the Mayan people, in the place now known as Puerto Morelos, in Mexico. Her current focus within her art form is to explore how her cultural heritage influences her movement, and her future aspiration is to pursue a master's degree in screen dance, which I'd really love to hear more about this idea of screen dance. I profess I don't know what that is. Charlie Cooper is a media artist and composer. His work spans electroacoustic composition, chamber music composition, performance, installation, scores for films and video. He draws heavily from field recording, found sounds, and homemade electronics. His work has been featured in performance festivals, galleries, and film festivals, as well as Art Prize 10, Grand Rapids, Traverse City Film Festival, the VideoSoundArchive.com, With Intentions Volume 18, and Science Gallery Lab Detroit's exhibit Depth. And Alexandra Caprara, my first time saying it out loud, is a multidisciplinary artist and writer from Toronto, Ontario. Her practice as a designer has led her to her work being staged internationally, and she is currently pursuing her MFA in Interdisciplinary Arts at Simon Fraser University. And of course, my name again is Cecily Nicholson. I have my introduction at the beginning of the event. So welcome to this wonderful crew, primarily from SFU, and of course, Diane as well. And so I have a couple questions that I'd like to offer up. And for those of you watching from home on the live stream, we are absolutely able to take your questions. So please go ahead and put them in the chat, and they'll make their way up to the stage eventually. Those of you in person, if you have questions, we'll invite you to have those, share those as part of the Q&A. We're working with a boom mic, so we're not going to touch the mic, but we'll move around with it. But we do want to use the mic so that folks at home can hear your questions if you have them, okay? So, The first question I was really quite curious about, and as I was saying earlier, just this appreciation and curiosity I have in terms of media arts being quite often layers of collaboration, movement across fields, multidisciplinary. Most of these artists here practice in a multidisciplinary way. I wondered if you as individuals could reflect on this performance, which is an excerpt again, and we can share a bit more about the broader production before we part ways today. But PPE Waves, A New Normal. I'm wondering what choices have guided you in terms of your contributions to the project. So I really would love to hear from each of you, because each of your pieces are different, though intermingled. And I wondered also how you thought through the idea of interactivity and thinking particularly about audience right now, given the varied platforms that we're all kind of on these days. And so for this event, for example, of course, doing an in-person conversation and also connecting to the live stream. So the two parts are that, just sort of, your contributions to today's performance or the broader performance, if that's a better approach. And then also just thinking about interactive activity and audience. So I don't know if there's somebody that would like to just jump right in.
I will. I can start. For me, the project started when Henry and I were in Merida in Mexico. And Henry has this idea of working with me as a person in the Ice Age, could be millions of years ago, with this idea of the box. And we had actually a place in Merida where they had a pool, a very small pool, and as you see from the video, Henry had this ideas of videoing me in the water or trying to get an image of a physical female older body as myself. And yeah, that's how, for me, this idea, and then it grew with thinking about the cast and how this was going to continue. So I think that was how it started with us in Mexico. Henry?
Perhaps.
Well, I am from Mexico, from the area that everything started, the artistic process. And I think my contribution is being a young body in training and going through my career process in the middle of a pandemic that affected my lifestyle and the way I train, and just my relationship with myself and other people, and like just that interruption of the process, and just going online and trying to manage and navigate what that means. Yeah.
So I am a master's student at SFU, and so as Henry was developing this project, we started having conversations, and that's how I became involved. In terms of my contribution for this specific part of the work, I was really connecting to the idea of geological time, or time spans that we can't necessarily perceive or think that we might be able to perceive in our day-to-day lives. And so for putting the sound together for this project, it really started with field recordings that I had made in Lake Michigan, where I grew up. And I really connected to the text. Lake Michigan also used to have a large population of sturgeon that were systematically wiped out. And so that was kind of my entry point into just thinking about how sound might be able to access or suggest these spans of time that maybe we can't perceive or feel ourselves.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm the lighting and video designer, and I think my contribution is mostly a collaboration with the other areas of design, and also, of course, with Henry. The video footage that you see was shot by Henry, and I just had the pleasure to edit it together and overlay some images of ice and glaciers to help articulate the idea of melting. From a lighting perspective, this piece, and you'll see in the larger show if any of you come to see it at SFU, kind of balances between the idea of confinement that we all experienced in the pandemic and the isolation we felt in the pandemic. And later in the show, as you saw in this slice of the piece, the vastness of being on a glacier and articulating the ways that that correlates to climate change. Yeah.
I guess maybe I should say something about the overall concept and how I came to it. It's kind of complex, really, because it's so many layers that sometimes I wonder if the audience might be confused about what they're seeing. The first layer, of course, is how people were feeling during the pandemic. And I must say that I was really impressed with the work my students were doing at the School for the Contemporary Arts at Simon Fraser University. I started seeing work that was more sensitive, more vulnerable, more perhaps even emotional, and that really touched me. I was also looking at a graphic from M.C. Escher that I had worked with many, many years ago, and came back to it. And I don't know if the audience knows a great deal about the Dutch graphic artist Escher, but he has some work that the work really can't exist in real time. Yeah. And I was fascinated with the relationship between what we consider as normal and what is perhaps supernormal. And of course, Escher's work is really grounded in a lot of that kind of impossibility. And I guess the third thing is, I was reading an incredible book by a professor of geology. The book is called Timefulness. Her name is Marcia Bjornerud. And the last text is taken from that book.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask specifically.
Yes, and one thing really struck me. Marcia said, rocks are not nouns, they're verbs. And I was just like, rocks are not nouns, they're verbs. They do things. Yes. And of course, the last thing is, Diane and I, being in Yucatan, in Merida, in Mexico, and this is where this amazing, millions of years ago, this event happened, where a meteorite crashed into Yucatan and caused actually the extinction of the dinosaurs. And for many years, they were trying to find out, well, where did this actually happen? Because the dust that came up into the air went throughout the world. And they were looking in Italy and found out some of the dust there. And then they started making connections. So I had to go to Yucatan. So those layers of complexity, climate change, the relationship between ourselves and nature, the pandemic where we're driving one another crazy, yeah, and trying to make art that reflected how we were feeling during this time. So when you put all of that together, you have PPE Waves, and I must say, PPE, I was playing on the idea of personal protective equipment, but also post-pandemic euphoria.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that fulsome answer, and there's a couple of notes that I think I hear a lot about how absolutely challenging it is for students, and I find it interesting because a lot of instructors and professors and teachers that I connect to have talked a lot about just how extraordinary the students' work has been at this time. And I don't know if that's a general thing, but it's definitely something that anecdotally I've heard from a number of places. So surely this is an example in this moment. I also, it's sort of that interlaying for sure, I think, comes across, and that's one of the beautiful things about our practices across disciplines is that we can mesh these scales together. I thought I would just shout out the two sound samples that we used in this piece, because I didn't get a chance to do that. But one is, again, excuse, I think now I'm in Italian, from Eben, Niando Lotano. The composer is Alfredo Catalani, and the singer was Massabane Cecilia Rangwansha, and the piano was Edmund Whitehead. And then the second piece, as you mentioned, was an excerpt from Timefulness, that was Marcia Bjorn.
I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
It's
I think it's Scandinavian, Bjornerud.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
But she's American.
Yeah, we're moving across a lot of human languages and beyond. And so, in terms of the work itself and the new normal, I wanted to ask about it. It's very direct. So there's elements of the performance that are almost literal in the sense that, we are contending with this cubed environment or the rectangle environment as we interface online. There's some very legible commentary on the pandemic, obviously straight through from the title. I think what I wanted to delve a little deeper into was this notion of the normal before the pandemic. So there's a lot of speakers and thinkers, and I'm sure ourselves have thought through the ways in which what was normal before this pandemic are not ways or practices or things that we necessarily want to return to. Certainly when we think about climate and we think about social justice or oppression and we think about inequity and so on. So I wanted to ask along those lines, what elements of your creative practice, and you've started to touch on this a little bit, but maybe a bit deeper, what elements of your creative practice have shifted and awakened perhaps in this current pandemic moment? What has been different? What are some of the challenges? I think you start to speak a little bit in terms of working through that digital interface. And what are the critical elements of new normal that you would like to see pull through to this present moment? So, so again, it's just to repeat elements of your creative practice that have shifted and awakened, some of the challenges, and critical elements of the new normal that you'd like to see pulled through to this present. We don't have to go in order, or we can.
I mean, one thing that I've been doing for quite a while that I would like to see more within the context of the institution that I currently work in. And when I say I've been doing it for a while, coming from the professional arena into the institution of higher education, that is the university, those two spaces are very, very different. And one of the things that I really try to do a lot is find ways of introducing students to the professional world while they're in the institution, and find ways of having them work together in this environment to actually see how things are in different spaces. And I mean, Diane has had an extensive career, and some of these students are just beginning their career. So I would like that to continue at a greater degree. So when I say the new normal in this context, I would like to see a relationship between the professional world and the academic world a little bit more porous, so that we can share a lot more.
I think I can speak as a student and just what I've seen in terms of the institution work and environment is that with this pandemic, there has been an awakening and more empathy towards our bodies and our mental health. There's been more understanding that if you're not fully there in that right headspace, it's okay for you to not go and train that day, because then it becomes dangerous. You can injure yourself, you can injure someone else. It's just not productive for you to do that. And we also learned to like stop and think. It sounds very simple, but we actually need downtime. We need time of nothingness as artists to explore new things and like let our art flourish, right? And something that I would like to see in this new normal is just revisit the idea that that we are human beings and dancers. Like dancers are human beings and not only capitalist investment. So we don't have to be on the go all the time. That's not necessary. We can slow down. We can take care of ourselves. And we can invest quality time in pieces and performances instead of quantity.
Especially mental health.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
I can add to that. Oh, sorry. You can go ahead.
I just want to follow on that by saying, from my experience as a dancer and performer, having now to wear this on stage is really interesting on how one expresses through this part. No, we have our physical body, but we're really just covered here, and it feels very, very different emotionally, having this thing over your mouth and breathing, and it feels like a restriction of not being able to tell more or say more in a way. And relating to work-wise, because now I'm actually working with people who come to me for gyrotonic and Pilates, I agree what Zaarah says, that I have clients who are really strongly connected to, I want my physical body to be working. I need to challenge myself more in working with my physical body. And I see the clients that I have are very, very focused on the importance of health. I think it's become prevalent. I think it's become, and it's lovely for me, coming from this background, working with people who also want to be connected and in tune with this, their bodies moving in space even, or just having a sensitivity to their physical body. It's wonderful for me when I have that kind of clientele, and it's smaller, my clientele, because of, people are fearful a little bit, but it's very fulfilling for me to have a level of that kind of connectedness and to work with people like that on that level.
Yeah, I don't want to speak too much because I think you two put it so beautifully, but I've noticed generally people are gentler to each other now that things are slowly returning. I can speak on a technical side of things, and from a design side of things, there's that same level of attentiveness and care that we take for our bodies. Any technician or person on the technical side of theater has very long days. And to borrow from collaborators I've worked with, the way that we produce work, especially in North America, is ridiculous in the amount of hours that we have to sometimes put in. And I've noticed coming back into this new normal, we've started to care about each other and look out for each other a lot more, and that's something that I think is so important, especially in an institution like a university, but professionally can sometimes be forgotten. And Henry's been so generous in making sure we were all taken care of in this process. And I'd like to see that carried out professionally across Canada and BC specifically.
Charlie?
I don't know, excuse me, if I have much to add to that. Other than in my experiences working during this time, that kind of understanding of taking care of yourself, it's a relational understanding that I didn't have before. So one, just to be shocked to say like, hey, I'm not, like I wasn't able to get things ready, or I'm not feeling right today to be able to do this, and then actually having that be a legitimate option, not to like always push through that. And not just for myself, but to understand that taking that time is better for everyone. So that understanding that this is not just these types of decisions aren't individual, that they are relational. And having that understanding of well-being kind of extend beyond yourself is definitely something that I didn't have before, but I've come to appreciate.
I'm so sorry, I keep trying to.
No.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate all of the observations, because I think you all speak to your specific sort of environments and work environments and practices, but what I hear is analogous to in a broader sense. And I particularly appreciate thinking through that shift around collective health versus the individual, because we are definitely encouraged in our broader systems to think individually and about the go, as you frame in the context of capital, but productivity, and yes, and to be in workspaces where there's an increasingly gentle relationship around health, and how strange it has been this past 18 months to 2 years, where you're calling in sick with the sniffles. I would just go to work for years and years. I would walk around with a cold or whatever it was. So I think there's lots of that's translatable across our spaces.
If I could say one thing very quickly. So you see how this last text by Professor Yonerud almost hits to the core of it. If she says, rocks are verbs, she's a geologist. And she says, we would take, if we would take more time with one another. So there's a connection with the pandemic, there's a connection between us as individuals, and there's a connection between us and our environment.
Absolutely.
So we have to take care of the environment, we have to take care of one another in order to survive. So we're thinking about, okay, I wish this pandemic would be over, but the damn thing keeps going, wave after wave after wave. So what are you going to do? Yeah, okay, let's party until we drop, but that's not going to solve the problem.
Well, you're going to drop eventually.
Yeah. So it's not so crazy having Escher's graphic Belvedere with pandemic ideas, with biological ideas about climate change.
Absolutely. I mean, and I hear and see in it a kind of collage, and there's a poetics that I often think in terms of language, but the pastiche and the scale. And I think that sometimes to represent our true, or what is a meaningful representation of our real experience, we have to work in that kind of convoluted and multiply scaled ways. It is interesting, but I think it is also, we're at this critical moment where we know that collectively as a human species, we are not taking care of our biomes, of our environment, of our relationship in the context of ecology. So we do know that collectively. We're at this kind of tipping point, and so it is interesting that this simultaneously the kinds of community and the strengthening of this idea of relational moments, and I don't think that's coincidental. I did actually want to ask about deep time. I'm absolutely fascinated by it as a profound way of an analogy to think through and to humble oneself, I think, and to bring great meaning and gratefulness to the everyday. That's partly how I see it. The question that I had formed around it was just asking about this performance itself as it engages analogies of deep time. And it's situating the human context within the geological scale, and that's partly what we are meaning, I think, when we use this notion of deep time. And you maybe can expand what you're thinking through, but I think you referenced, Henry and Charlie, the geology of it and the scale. But the evocation of the glacier ice is the overt metaphor there. And I wondered, I just happened to, it's not happening, this is obvious a connection for me in terms of Leanne Simpson's recent album. And there's this a beautiful album if you've not come across her work or this most recent example, but it's called Theory of Ice. And she comments, and this is just pulled from an interview with the CBC, there's different conversations you can interact with, and certainly check out that album. But she says, how transformative, in working through this project, learning how transformative water is. How it changes form from a gas to a liquid to a solid, which is metaphorically very, really, really rich in terms of witnessing those transitions that are obviously also a part of us. And I thought, I wondered if you could talk a little bit more for yourselves, especially those who are embodying a practice, so your body and your movement. But I also think about vocality, and I think about image and projection as a visual culture dominantly, including elements of performing or like the actual staging of the choreography. How does that metaphor weave through for you? And does it connect? I mean, that metaphor, that storytelling about the sturgeon is very clear. And sort of the current urgencies around, as Christy Balcour has originate that idea of water is life, and a mantra that many of us have taken into our practices. So, yeah, I just wondered if you had more to say or think through about that analogy of water and how that relates to your individual.
I nominate Charlie to start. And the reason why I say that is he comes from a fascinating part of North America where, in deep time, that entire huge glacial movement south that formed the Great Lakes into that area.
This is where I'm from too, yes.
It's really that sense of, how long ago was that?
Yeah.
When you talk about deep time, I remember reading Hutton, if the 24-hour clock is like this, human beings came in the last minute. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine that? We've been here only a minute in that whole sequence of time, and we're destroying the whole thing.
Yeah, it's not impressive, is it?
Charlie.
I think for me, the part that I connect to with deep time is kind of the difficulty, but maybe like necessarily trying to hold both an idea of deep time and the time that we live our day-to-day lives in together. Not just to kind of say, oh yeah, it goes on longer than we do, all this kind of stuff, but really trying to hold both as, it's a hard thing to do. But the way I connect it is, I grew up about a half an hour from Lake Michigan, like a half an hour drive from Lake Michigan. And the lake just is like in all of our consciousness, like, when we go there, we see these steep banks that over time erode like this, and then when they flatten out, and then you get to the next one, and then it goes like this, and it goes like this, and the water comes up, and then it recedes in these cycles of time, and we plan our lives around that, and if we get 4 feet of snow, we're like, well, I wonder what's going on with the lake today, because I had something to do with the lake. Or when we see the water coming up and coming up and coming up, it's like, okay, we can't go to this park right now because it's flooded, but in 3 years, it'll be back. And so kind of that understanding of trying to grasp these larger cycles or these larger spans of time again, to me it's very difficult, but there are connections between those spans of time and our day-to-day lives, and that's actually a lot of what I was drawing from for this project, is just remembering that connection that I have, and that many people that grew up there have to this entity that we all know is much larger than us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer.
Any water babies?
The dancers, I'm quite curious. Yeah, Diane.
Yeah, I think of the role that Henry wanted me to play, and I'm a water babe. I adore water, and I think as an older woman in her 60s and working with Zaarah, who's younger, and that sense of time of me being from millions of years ago, and having a physical body that is different, and having her, I just feel that was very poignant, and it was nice for me. I felt very honored to have this role and be comfortable, to be comfortable, you know, naked as a elderly person, older woman, mature woman, and giving that, hopefully, a visual of that in some way, sensitivity of that. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I grew up in Puerto Morelos, which is near Cancun, so lots of water. And that was my entire upbringing, my entire childhood. Every memory I have, it's me either on the ocean or in the cenotes, which are like not sweet, but like not salty water bodies under me.
We would call it soft water.
Yeah, soft water, thank you. So yeah, and I have this story, if it's okay. I told Henry and Diane when we were in the process. When I was young, I was traveling with my parents in Latin America, and we went to Guatemala, and we were in the lake Atitlan with the volcano, and there was these two young boys, not much older than me. I was like 4 years old maybe, and I still have this memory very present. And they were fishing, and they caught tiny little fish, and the fish was just there jumping, grasping for air, jumping. And I asked my parents in despair, like, please put it back in the water, please. And they were like, no, like that's their dinner, like they have to eat. And in this fish little, like last breath, I got the courage and I touched the fish and I like throw it back. And we all, like the 5 of us, just like turned around and saw the fish going away. So I really channeled that memory into this choreography. Like I feel that memory with me while I'm performing. And with the text at the end and everything, I just feel that Mother Earth is grasping for its, you know, like for air. With this virus going around and all the diseases, modern diseases that we're creating because of our involvement in the environment, and we're destroying the earth, she's just like asking for for air. Yeah.
And remember, your family had to cook them all dinner, no?
Yeah,
Something.
we had to cook dinner for them that night.
It's kind parents. We're nearing 3 o'clock, and I have a couple more questions, but I'm also just thought I'd mention to the group present and to folks on the live stream, if you have questions, so particularly in the live stream, please put those in the chat, and they'll make their way to me in a moment. So I'm going to ask my last question. Oh, do we have more than one? I guess I should clarify. No. Okay. So I'm going to ask my last question, and then I'll take. It sounds like we have one from the live stream, and if there's any in person, and then maybe we'll just kind of do some closing remarks after that. So the last question I had is, and again, I've looped around this a few different ways, but I've been thinking a lot about collaboration, and I think it's an interesting time for disciplines that historically, like theater and dance, potentially mainly being something that would happen in the real, in the context of audience and all of the restrictions, obviously, that we know that are in place for that, and singing too. And so we find our ways back. But it's been an interesting observation, observing and witnessing throughout this pandemic, the relationships around collaboration with media artists, with people with the kinds of skills and navigability in these sort of various digital platforms and means. And I'm very aware of a community of tech people in production, people who are in the room right now, which we tend to put into the fourth wall and sort of, but we exist in part in the Ethernet because of that. So I wanted to ask about collaboration a bit more, and thinking about across discipline and segments. And my question was just simply, how do you approach collaboration from your different fields and disciplines? And how do you find common ground to present a cohesive work? And so, especially an ensemble, a different kind of so how do you kind of come to something that's cohesive? And how does that process shift or move from sharing an excerpt, which is today's is an excerpt, to establishing a full production? I'm quite curious, point A to B for you. So if that seems like a clear question, I'll turn that back over to y'all.
I think Henry should answer
Alex?
that. I think Henry.
I knew you were going to
Let's start with Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I have a couple of different ways that I approach collaboration, both as a designer and as a theater maker. In this project specifically, I think it starts with vision. Henry has such a clear vision for this show. The Belvedere specifically, I think, was a big point of inspiration. And for me, in my role doing video in particular, it's about executing that vision and creating some magic that I think can sometimes look both very literally exactly like what Henry wants, but also metaphorical, and to help kind of articulate these ideas to an audience and also to everyone in the room that's dancing. For me, when I approach video work, especially nature that's collaborative, I think dance in particular, you know, the conversations we have to be less literal, and we have to sort of talk about these ways that we can show how time-based work and these abstract ideas of climate change can be presented in images and in light. So yeah, for us and for myself, I like to start with imagery and conversations around things that are evocative emotionally. Oftentimes when I think about design and collaboration, it comes from this gut instinct of a place. We know where the work wants to take us. And as a designer, and I think as artists, we have to follow those instincts. And usually in having these conversations, we kind of find the common ground where we're all kind of feeling the same thing. And that, I think, is where the work comes to life. And for me, that's kind of how this work came to be. In producing this shorter version, it was about taking those most important parts of that process and the design elements and kind of compressing them into this little slice for this show and for you guys. I hope that answers your question a little bit.
It's a little bit, and part 1 of 5, I guess. So it's a collaboration question.
I mean, for me, as I get older and, you know, as I see such potential in other people, one of the things that I'm really interested in, and sometimes I put my collaborators on the spot, and I mean the dancers, the musicians, the visual artists, the production and design people, I'm really interested in what they have to say. Mm-hmm. Of course, I have an overall vision and I say, okay, this is what I would like to do. But I'm really, really interested in what they have to say, because at this stage, I know what most of my ideas are like. Mm-hmm. And I might demonstrate something, but I want to see what they do with it. Because I like to look. I really like to look, and I have to give them something to start moving. Mm-hmm. And then I look. And I'm speaking mostly about the dancers right now. I really like to look and see the little nuances of what they do with it, because there, I want to go there. Mm-hmm. I want to see them in the piece, their ideas, how they think about what I give to them. Because it's a little bit boring if I keep just doing what I want about me.
Keep telling people what to do. It's more of a collaboration oriented.
Yeah, I think working with Henry and working in Europe for many years, for me it's really rewarding to be improvising. Like improvisation, and Henry's really, I mean, it's challenging, I realize, for a lot of people, but giving you the possibility to have your input, and you know, you work on things and we go home at night, it's like, no, I need to change that, try this, I have this idea. So it can be challenging, really challenging, but it's very rewarding to have the freedom to try things and yeah, to put your own, you feel like you're part of something, a real collaboration, and not just given steps and say, mimic this. So yeah, I think improvisation, which I've loved doing in all my career, is so rewarding. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wonderful. It's also really challenging.
Oh, it's very
a lot
challenging.
of people very uncomfortable with it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think for me, it comes as a super basic thing, but communication, like open communication and trust. You have to be able to trust trust the people you're working with, and allow space for individuality in the collective. Like that's how you find common ground, I think. Like, you have to allow and accept that each individual has something to bring to the table, and be open about it, and just establish expectations, right? Like, what is it that we want? What is it that you want from me? And we'll get there somehow, you know, just trust.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
For me, collaboration has always been a really freeing process. I think something that I have to contend with sometimes is kind of feeling the weight of years of training or of practice, or of like disciplinary, like working towards a disciplinary expertise. And it can be very easy to try to carry the weight of all that into every project that you do. And I think that although that's always a stumbling block, it's more of a stumbling block when I'm collaborating. So for me, I have to kind of reverse engineer it. Like, I think I don't think about myself bringing in expertise, which is difficult because I think that's a lot of the language you hear about collaboration. Like, how you know about this, and then you know about this, and then you know about this, and then we'll all throw our knowledge at each other and make something. But that's always been difficult for me. And so the freeing part is learning. And so when I come to like a rehearsal with dancers, I could very walk in and say, okay, well, I'm the sound guy and I know about sound, but I don't know anything about dance. Or I could walk in and say, I'm going to learn about dance today. I'm going to watch them and try to figure out and get what I can get from it, and learn about what they do, and then go backwards and see how that resonates with what I can bring in. So for me, it's very freeing to work in that opposite way.
Yeah, really great. I really appreciate it. I think I just learned from you all right now a little bit more about it. And I think particularly these ideas around communication, and it's not basic, though. It's so elaborate.
Yeah.
But this notion of learning and engaging and putting oneself bravely into that fray. But I also like the formal constraint. And so, you know, that we do want to work with some kinds of structures, or you know, maybe it's expertise or knowledge, but and often that is generative once you fill it up, and there's a mutuality to that. So yeah, that was a lovely collaborative answer to my collaborative question. I have two from the I've got more. So let me shush up and get to a few of the questions from I assume our viewers online. So one question here is just a general sense, what is the role of art in a time of crisis? Three sentences or less. No, just kidding. But maybe take a crack at it if anybody thinks.
Anyway.
You know, some, or maybe some of the roles of art. Obviously, you can't do everything. Or maybe. Thoughts? Whoever that was. Woo.
I think for me, a short answer is hope.
Mm-hmm.
That's the short answer.
Yeah. And I'm gonna just and hope as in things to hope for, or
it gives you hope. Just that, like, you can hope for something, or it can like just inform hope in your body and help you carry on.
Yeah, I love that. And because I think the way you just described that the second time talks to me more about futurity. When you have hope, you move with purpose towards a future moment, and that's not a small thing. Yeah. Any other thoughts? The role of art in the time of crisis?
Maybe freeing something of freeing the mind and giving it other possibilities to enjoy.
I can personally, I don't know how much this extends beyond that, but I immediately thought about our earlier conversation about mental health and well-being, in that we were all saying, you know, this is something that we hope to move forward, but during this past year, we've also been a part of processes where we're enacting that in space and time. And to me, that's been very powerful to be in situations or in spaces in which we are sort of enacting the things that we are hoping for. So I think that there's, and I don't know how much that might extend beyond the making process, but that has been a lot of my source of hope, is seeing like, oh, we were hoping for that, and we just did it. We just did it today. we were caring for each other, we were doing this, we were doing that, and just kind of seeing it in those small little ways has been, for me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We have a couple more questions here, and feel free to circle back if you have more to add to that one. Just a question from Alana. Rocks have animacy for me. Thinking of creation story, Grandmother Rock, who told us about the natural world of animals and plants, etc. Through listening to an older and wiser woman, we were able to grow and survive as Mi'kmaq people. What are the panel's ideas of who we listen to now in this new normal? To each other, to those in power, to the rocks, etc. She didn't say the rocks, but I added that. But
Those questions are getting more and more difficult.
Well, they're good questions. I mean, and I mean, you've opened up you've opened it up. So.
Who do we listen to?
Who do we listen to?
I think, to jump in first here, not so much who, but what. We've been listening to our Earth a lot more. You said it, you touched on it earlier, but the Earth is angry. I think that when we think about art making, all the things that we do in this life, especially right now, relate to the environment and how we relate to it. I think that we've started to pay attention a little bit to how to take care of each other and how to take care of this land and this place that we live and make art. And I think that deep listening to our environment and to each other is what I think is driving the current conversations right now. And I think as artists, you can't help but think critically about these things. So I think, my answer is we have to listen to the Earth right now.
Well, and I appreciate that this performance, in answer to that, or an extension of that, that listening is actually quite sophisticated. And so there's the interpolation through the body, there's an engagement and a depth and a range of sound. So when we say that sort of broader, like listening to the Earth, obviously there's an enormous range of what that could possibly be in terms of systems and forces and ecology. So I think that's scratching the surface, but this performance definitely took us deeper. Is there anybody else who would like to think more on that question?
I think for me, this is really interesting because I catch myself doing it too. Sometimes you have so much to say that you're always talking. And and the question is also, how do you listen? How do you find space to listen? How do you not always want to put forward your views? And I think once you start thinking about that, you leave space to listen. So how do you listen, I guess? Make more space. And it's really hard because we're very opinionated as people, and it's really hard sometimes to shut up and listen.
So now we're collectively. It's a key point. We want to fill in spaces too. We're very uncomfortable with silence, and so I'll take that to heart. I have another question from. I keep wanting to say our studio audience, but this would be the studio audience if we were on television, but from our live stream crew. And so how does, it's just a one sentence question, how does your relationship with an audience change when they access a performance remotely?
Ooh.
You don't get the same feedback.
Yeah.
You don't get a feedback when there's no feedback, there's no vibrations coming. You feel like you can't tell, you can't play with the same feeling when you have people in front of you as a dancer.
Yeah, following up on that, I did a few performances during the pandemic through Zoom, and I just felt that my energy was leaving and never coming back. Like I was just like empty.
Giving, just giving.
And and just like coming back to a in-person performance or hybrid, but having like people in the space with me just gave it back. We draw intention and energy from you guys too. Like, it's not just us that you come here and sit down and watch, but we are connecting with you in a deeper sense, and it fits, the performance. It just like gives more to it, like texture.
It's interesting though, because as I said earlier, one of the things that gave me energy to do this longer piece, and in the longer piece, actually there are 5 student choreographers. I was really impressed by what they were doing on their own. And they were making videos mostly of all the work that they were doing. So in a sense, maybe there was not a mutual feedback in the live performance context, but looking at what they had done on their own, maybe in their garage, maybe in their basements, maybe in their little bedroom, and that's where they were doing the work. Maybe out in a river or out in the field somewhere. I saw something there that really inspired me. So in that sense, even though I was not there to share it with them in a live context, I was able to get a peephole at something they were doing on their own, in their own space, that inspired me.
It's like an intimacy, no? There's a certain intimacy you have when you're looking like that. As if you are just, an intimacy you get from looking. Yeah, I found that watching it. Yeah.
But the live context is as Zaarah says, it's here right now. The dancers actually, and not just the dancers, the entire cast, they feel your attention. And in the beginning of this piece, can you imagine in the larger piece, there are 17 dancers. I really wanted them to walk forward without their mask on and slowly put their mask on. And these people coming at you. And it's almost like, here I am, here I am, here I am not. And all you see is the eyes. And it's amazing how it's almost like losing your identity as you put this mask on. So it's fascinating what things you learn out of that context, and also the things that you lose, and at the same time, you're trying to figure out, how do I make a connection now that that context has changed completely? So we keep talking about the new normal. What the hell is the new normal? What was the old normal? How are we going to negotiate? Do we want to go back there? No, we can't. So this question mark, a new normal, we're fully in that, and we'll be in that for quite a while.
I hear that. I just thought I'd pause to see if there's any questions in the room today. Yeah, Kristen. But we'll let you just wait for the mics just so we can catch it for folks at home.
Hi there. My name is Christina. I'm not a performance artist. I'm an artist visual mostly. And sometimes when I have my exhibition, I like to be with people. So I understand the point about connecting with the audience and you learn from the feedback. At the same time, I'm a big fan of, I'm sure you know, Trevor, the talk host in New York. He's chosen to move to a studio where there is no audience. And in an interview with Stephen Kubrick, he explained that he learned that the new normal cannot be going back to where it was, and he's gotten used to the pandemic mode of operating, and how he just doesn't need to worry about the audience feedback and how to entertain them. So he does whatever, he says whatever he really wants to say. So I find that very interesting because as an artist, you do want to make a dialogue with your audience, but at the same time, you probably are quite sure of what you want to communicate there's like a new limit to work with that could create a new space. There's no right or wrong answer, but like I find, like I think you mentioned how you might want to think about how to really connect with the means and this you've got now. So it's something that I've constantly been thinking about, because even for visual artists, you know, like at the gallery, you can't always be there. Like I was actually thinking of going away completely during the duration of my show right now, but like, then I'm like, I really want to see how people, you know, talks about things and react. So I think about that a lot. That's a very interesting and never-ending conversation.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have something to say about it. I agree, yes. However, like dance is a performance art. We need the audience, we like the audience, and it's been going on for centuries, right? Like it was like a way of interacting the town people, just like together and like performing for each other and like socializing. But also there's certain beauty of not having a live audience. And this kind of ties in with the screen dance that I mentioned in my biography. It's just mixing the two art forms of film and dance and creating something like you have something to say. So you create something for the screen. And the impact is going to be there because that's the intention, right? But I don't feel like this pandemic opened the door for that art form to expand and develop, but I feel that life is never going to be replaced. Like the sensation of being in a theater with other humans is just something unique that we all need.
I don't know how many people here know the Escher sketch Belvedere. I wish I had a copy of it here. It's a house, and yeah, if you have a phone, you can just Google it. It's called Belvedere. It's a house, and in the basement of that house, you have this guy staring through these bars and almost driving himself crazy. You have another guy sitting on a bench outside the house looking at a cube. One of Escher's cubes, that's an impossible cube. But also, sometimes the name, I lose the name, it's a very famous British scientist. His name begins with P. I'll remember it in a second. And going up the stairs of the house is a couple. And on the ground floor of the house, you have this guy looking out over a landscape. And then there's a ladder going up to the second floor. One guy is on the bottom of the ladder, and the next guy is almost at the top. But the building is an impossible building. It cannot exist, because the ladder starts outside, goes inside, and it's really weird. If you've ever seen any of Escher's work, it doesn't exist. It cannot exist. But at the very top of the building, there's this woman looking out. And this is the image I have that I gave to Diane. You are the woman in the cube. You're just waking up from 3 million years of sleep. And somehow you're in between that environment, that's the screen, that's another dimension. You're in the box, the cube. And then you have a reflection of yourself in another dimension. So it's almost like you're waking up for a dream, but the wake up is 20-minute extension. And you're crazy, driving yourself nuts, because that's you on the screen, and that's you in front there. And for me, it brings up the issue of communication. It's almost like we have to go to a completely new level of communication in order to bridge that gap that we don't have the audience in front of us anymore. And I mean, I might be sounding a little bit crazy right now, but It's almost like it's a ritual that perhaps a lot of our ancestors or people from a long time ago had probably cultivated. That's why I'm fascinated with the Maya. That's why I'm fascinated with the Buddhist traditions. It's almost like you have to find some way to get into that other dimension that is very, very different from this dimension. And I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but this is where we are right now. We're at this place, it's almost like the top of that level, and we don't know what to do. We're killing one another. You know, I mean, you turn the radio on or the TV on every day now, and you're hearing all these bizarre things. We're at that place where we cannot handle the reality that we're in right now. How do we change that? We don't know. Question mark, new normal.
Well, we're back to the question of art in the time of crisis, I think. So folks, unless there's any other questions in the room, I'll just pause for that. And I'll just, no new ones on my Google Doc. So I think we're time to round out the event today. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the, before we can give a hearty applause, I just wanted to shout out some forthcoming events connected to this performance, and in particular the fall SCA repertory dance performance. It's running from November 17th to the 20th. This is part of SFU Productions, hey? And then I understand that on the 16th of November there's a sort of preview.
There is a dress rehearsal that's live online that you can sign up online to see.
Okay. I'm just wondering if I can point people to the right direction to learn more about it. Would it be Contemporary Arts for
Yes,
SFU?
on the Contemporary Arts website.
Okay.
Or if you just go to Simon Fraser University and type in PPE Waves, it'll take you right to that site.
Right on. And this is also there's some collaboration with McMaster University as well, as I understand.
Yes, there's another production that I'm doing with the Live Lab at McMaster University. It's a group of neuroscientists who are looking at what happens when we make art, what happens in the brain. So that conference will be on the 20th of November, and it's also online, and there will be a couple of our dancers, not these dancers, but a couple of other dancers there.
Okay. Well, once again then, please join me in thanking our guests today for the wonderful performance, taking time to spend a good quality of time answering questions and sharing more about your practice. So thank you. Till next time. And so thanks again to our audience. And I have a long list, if you'll bear with me for a minute, to thank in terms of staff. I unfortunately left my event plan outs there, so I might be missing some last names. But first of all, in terms of our production crew, Devin Scott and Paige, I'd like to thank you for your quiet, diligent presence over there. So folks at home, that's how we've been able to connect. Up in the booth, in terms of our tech team, we have a Thomas, a Tommy, and a Nathan, I believe. Thank you so much for your work today as well as yesterday. In terms of the staff coordinating, Reese Edwards in particular for coordinating all of the above, and awesome folks, Savi Baines, Alana Edwards, who's off moderating for us right now, Jordan Strom, who's in the room as well, Karen Cancino, Lindsay McCarthy, just wonderful artists, educators, brilliant organizers. Who else am I missing? So in terms of front of house, thank you to Barbie, Herline, and Sandra. Raman. Herline unfortunately was ill today, so Raman and Sandra. Thank you, Linda and Calvin on the front door. Folks at home, who am I missing? Help me out. Sherry. Oh, so sorry. I'm so sorry. Nice to meet you. Thank you. Barbie, did I shout you out? Thank you so much. You're brilliant. So once again, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you, I guess, next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.